my big thing on set is just working at the pace that I want to work at, which is relatively quickly. So as a director, I'm pretty organized. I know exactly what I want to get in a day, and I want to move at that pace. So my concern is that all the people on their team can move as quickly as I move. And I'm realistic. Like, I don't say to a lighting person, hey, you got 20 minutes to do a lighting setup. It should take 2 hours. I kind of know what it's going to take. And they, we talk about it long before. But when somebody says to me, I need 2 hours to do a lighting setup, they get 2 hours. They don't get 3 hours. Hey everybody, we're back to We're Making a Movie, and we're going to give you the weekly update as to what went on this week. So basically there were 3 things that went on. I'm going to say we're in the pre-production phase. So as opposed to the development phase, development is writing the script and getting the financing and doing all that kind of stuff. And then pre-production or pre-production is planning. And then pre-production is planning closer to the actual shoot. So actually there's 4 things that went on. One is let's start with the first thing. We had a production meeting earlier this week to talk about who we're going to hire on the crew. So I have already hired a DP, director of photography, and a line producer, which is Araceli here. And we just hired a production manager also. So I'm going to explain the difference between the DP obviously is, the cinematographer, and I'm directing the movie. So I'll work closely with the cinematographer. His name's Scott Leslie, and he will help me a lot in setting up all the shots and the lighting and the lenses and all the stuff that he does really well. So Sally is the line producer, and this girl, Kelly, this woman called Kelly, is going to be the unit manager. So it could get a little confusing because it's Sally and Kelly. So hopefully you can keep that separate. So Sally, basically, you're involved, your responsibility, other than everything, is to primarily manage all the administration on the shoot. So make sure that everything gets paid for, that all the receipts stay in order, that that you're managing the money, the scheduling, the budgeting, and the contracts, and a lot of that kind of stuff. Whereas Kelly is primarily involved in what I'm going to say the artistic side of the movie making. So she's going to be focused mostly on locations, art direction, wardrobe, props, hair, makeup, all that kind of stuff. She's not going to do it all, but all those people are going to report to her. So she's not going to do any of the administration. Sally will do that. So that's kind of how that breaks down. Now, they will closely work with each other, because the second thing we're doing this week is starting location scouting. So Sally, why don't you talk about that?
Yeah, so I'm working really closely with Kelly as far as location scouting, just because since she is doing more of the artistic side, getting her opinion and thoughts on what locations she think might work for the set is important. And then I'm kind of doing a lot of the outreach. Her and I are both kind of working together on that, finding contacts for different locations that we do like, seeing their availability, if they are available, how much it's going to cost for the locations, and then kind of figuring that all out with the budget.
So how you kind of identifying locations? I know you spoke to the city of San Diego. I don't know if that helped or.
Yeah, so we're in contact with the film commission, with the city of San Diego helping us. We're giving them kind of like a shopping list of locations that we're looking for, and that we're working closely with them. And then also if we use any kind of like public spaces there, we have to do all of our permitting through them. So they'll help provide us with permits for that. And then her and I are I've lived in San Diego now for I think like 5 or 6 years. So, and I do a lot of exploring, looking around. So I feel like I have a good basis. Not for all, I would say maybe for like half or a little more than half. And then Kelly has also lived here for a while, so she knows some places I might not know about. So we're working together. And then places like a hospital is definitely one of the bigger challenges that we're trying to tackle. And it's better to try and tackle them as early as you can, so that way if any hiccups come further along the way, you're not stressed out before production.
Yeah. Did we mention that we're shooting in San Diego? I can't remember, but If we didn't, we're shooting in San
I think
Diego.
in the last episode we touched on it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. All right. So we're shooting in San Diego. Yeah. So I agree. The more lead time you can have in casting, the better. Just because sometimes you don't find what you're looking for right away. So it takes a long time to find something or just to contract it. Sometimes there's a lot of administration, like in the case of a hospital, it might take a month to go through various levels of administration for them to agree to it. So are there any tricky things that you're looking at, like the convention center or stuff like that? I mean, what have you started finding challenges with anything?
Not any big challenges yet. The only challenge is we have to set up for a convention center scene, and I'd say the biggest challenge is finding a convention center space that is available during the summer, and also trying to figure out and working with Kelly kind of like the art direction we want to take to fill a big space like that without spending a ton of money.
Right. But that's what I call a big production scene. So
Mhm.
that's where we will spend more money than normal because you want the movie to look a bit bigger and you want it to be accurate.
Mhm.
Okay, so that's locations. Um, then we also had a script update meeting with Dr. D. So the script will constantly be evolving, but the secret in continuing to kind of revise the script is not to change the characters and the locations. You can just change the dialogue. So it's obviously easy, real easy to change what they're saying within a scene. But if you start changing who's in the scene and where the scene takes place, that throws the whole schedule out, which makes it really tricky. So that's what we talked about in our script update meeting. And he's, very particular, sort of, or not particular, but he's, more interested in sort of what the characters are conversing about, and not as much as where they're conversing. So, which is good. So it's possible that there might be, some changes of scenes or some locations. It's possible. We're going to try to keep that to a minimum. Um, and it's also possible that there might be a different character here or there, depending on which direction the scene takes. But also, we'll try to keep that to a minimum. So one could say that our script is like, I know that a lot of people in the industry say, "Did you lock your script?" That's a term, locking a script. And locking a script means there's never going to be any more changes to it. But I can tell you from experience that that never is the case, because even with a lock script on set, people make changes to it, especially the actors. The actors often go off script, unless a director is really, really particular about that. And as a director, I can tell you, I like the actors to stay on script for the first few takes. And then sometimes if they say to me, "Hey, can we try something different?" then I always let them do it. Because sometimes they're feeling the character and you give them a little bit of creative latitude. And sometimes you get a really great, performance out of it that you didn't expect. Now, it can't go too far off script. They can't change sort of the conversation, what's going on and the content of it, but they can change the way they would say it, as opposed to the words that the writer scripted. They might say it in different words, but it's more or less the same conversation. So, but a lock script, I'm going to call a lock script something where we know exactly which locations we're shooting in and which scenes we're shooting. All right. But not necessarily locked to the dialogue. Although we know the dialogue that's in the script. We just don't know if that's going to be in the final movie, because it might change and the edit might, have a different style of producing that. But a lock script really is for the sake of not changing locations and characters so that you can actually schedule and you don't have
Quick
to
question, Jeff.
yeah.
Kelly and I were discussing because there's a scene in the script where it's a super short scene, maybe a page long, but it requires a new location like a house. Um, we were talking about changing the location to an outside park to minimize having to find a separate location. Is that something, like when you're saying we wouldn't change locations rarely, is that something that would be possible after like kind of working with the schedule? Kind of, I don't know if that has to do with what you're talking about right now.
Well, first of all, we're early into this planning, so now would be the time to make that change.
Mhm.
We could even do that on the day of, and I'd prefer not to, but it now is a good time to make that change. And that I think I know the scene you're talking about. And it doesn't really matter where that scene takes place because the location is not really imperative in the scene. It's more about the dialogue. So that scene
Yeah.
could take place anywhere. Now, the only thing that I don't like about the park, do you know what's what I'm going to say is what I don't like about the park?
Noise and weather.
Correct. Correct. I'd rather contain it to an indoor shot than an outdoor shot just because it's easier to control the sound and the weather and the lighting. So, oh, sorry. So whatever we could do to to keep it as easy as possible to shoot that would be best. So if you could find, even if whatever location we're in that day and we turn the cameras and shoot the other way, or find something within the same building or hallway or whatever, think about that when you're going to change location. Just think about production, ease of production, primarily sound. Because you start shooting outdoors, you got airplanes flying over and you got all kinds of birds and this and that in a park and people walking by and permitting. So it's funny how when you said that, I'm thinking, yeah, I don't care about where that scene takes place. What I care about is how easy it's going to be to shoot it.
Yeah.
That's what you guys should bear in mind.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. Because I know even around, especially around the time that we're shooting in San Diego, there's like June gloom. So there's
Yeah,
lots
the
of,
clouds change the
yeah.
whole lighting and they come and go. So, I mean, the clouds are good for shooting. It's much easier to shoot with clouds than it is with, because then you can light around them, but it's not consistent. That's the problem. So yeah, if you guys bear that, we haven't talked about that, so I'm glad you mentioned it, but yeah, definitely bear that in mind. You want some variety, obviously. You want some indoor, outdoor, you want, some maybe walking and tracking shots and stuff like that. So, maybe that's just for variety. Maybe that will be a walking shot, which is harder to do, but sometimes looks good,
Yeah.
and, Scott knows how to do that. He's good at that. And we'll have a steady cam if we need it, or a gimbal, or even, some type of dolly that we can track with. Maybe even we could do it on a jib. So you can think about that. But if there is another location that we're going to be shooting at that lends itself to shooting that scene by changing things around a little bit, then that obviously is the easiest.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's the script. So the script is very, very important, because it's the roadmap of what we're going to be doing. So I take that script very seriously, but I also know it can't be like locked, because there's always has to be flexibility based on things that happen. But you don't want to change the story and sort of the interaction of the characters. You just might change how, where, and when they say it. All right. So that's casting, locations, script, and then crew. Did I talk about crew? But oh yeah, I talked about hiring. So now we're starting to think about putting out offers to various people. So Kelly's looking at people on the artistic side, like she's looking at an art director, at some wardrobe people, makeup, hair, props, all those kind of people. And she's worked with a lot of them before, so I trust that she knows who she wants to work with. And again, you were at the meeting, Sally. So I said to her, and then Scott's looking at all the technical people, the grips, the gaffers, sound, um, DIT, all this kind of stuff. And I said to both of them, these people are generally, those people that you're going to hire are going to be more or less reporting to you, not to me. And you need to be able to trust them and work with them well. My big thing on set is just working at the pace that I want to work at, which is relatively quickly. So as a director, I'm pretty organized. I know exactly what I want to get in a day, and I want to move at that pace. So my concern is that all the people on their team can move as quickly as I move. And I'm realistic. Like, I don't say to a lighting person, hey, you got 20 minutes to do a lighting setup that should take 2 hours. I kind of know what it's going to take. And we talk about it long before. But when somebody says to me, I need 2 hours to do a lighting setup, they get 2 hours. They don't get 3 hours. This happens a lot. So it's funny because one of the gaffers that Scott was talking about, I mean, I've worked with a lot of the same people that he's talking about because Scott and I have shot 2 movies together before. And so I know the people. And one of my concerns was, one or two of them don't move at the, or haven't in the past moved at the pace that I move at. Is that going to be a problem? And he assured me that it isn't. So he knows. The thing about Scott and Kelly is they both know how I like to work and the speed at which I like to work. So they understand that and they'll hire accordingly. And you obviously you want to get the best people possible for each of the jobs, but it's low budget indie filmmaking and it's a non-union crew. So obviously you're picking from the non-union people, which luckily in San Diego there's a lot of good ones. So we have good choices and they're good people because I've worked with a lot of them before. But I'm not particular. Also, Sally, you'll hire a bunch of PAs to help you out to do all the stuff that you need doing. So these people on set don't report to me. I mean, I'm the director. There's only one person I told you who I care about, which job, and that's the script supervisor, because that person's going to sit beside me and kind of be my right-hand person throughout the entire shoot. And I want the chemistry to be right on that. Like I want to like the person who's sitting beside me. I want them to be skilled, know what they're doing, and I want to trust them. So we'll find somebody. We've already interviewed a couple of people, as you know. And it's funny. Hiring's an interesting thing. You go, some of it's off experience, like, the type of relationship you've had with them in the past. Some people you don't know, so you don't have that relationship. You just have to go off of references from other people. Or sometimes it's just cold. Like you meet them and you think, hey, this person could work out, maybe, maybe not. And then there's some false starts. Like for instance, we just interviewed a first AD, Sally and I. So tell us about that. How did that go without naming names?
I thought it went pretty well. The interview went, it's like an hour-long interview, kind of briefed over the project, set expectations. Unfortunately, the person that we liked and interviewed is no longer available for the duration that we want to shoot. So, which is important. It's important to mention why we're trying to find people so early, just because other productions come up or other job opportunities. So it's good to find people and make offers to get them to commit ahead of time so they don't get taken away from other things.
Yeah. Did we find out if that was a money thing? Like if his other offer was, more lucrative, or do we know?
I'm not sure. I didn't hear back.
Yeah, because I was kind of surprised. I thought we had a really good interview and I thought that the chemistry was good. We liked each other. And I thought that, we were going to make him a decent offer,
Mhm.
but something else came along and all of a sudden he took it without even having us counter or talk, which I was surprised about. I was really surprised because I thought that our offer in some ways might have been better than the other one, but I don't know what the other one is.
Mhm.
And he's non-union, so I don't think it's going to, like, we're paying decent on our shoot. It's not like we're not the bottom of the barrel here. We're decent. We might not be union rates, but we're good. It's very competitive. So anyways, that happens. So it'll be interesting to see who's available, who wants to do it, and how it all works out.
Mhm.
But that's the update. Jared, any questions about that? I know you're new to this game.
Mm-hmm. Not really a whole lot. I kind of understand the gist of what you guys are all talking about through the conversations I've had with you before. Who would you say uh for RSLA for the line producing role, who would you say are like your top picks for people that you want to hire first? Obviously, the first AD is a major one, but who are some of the other top picks that you want to just hire right off the bat as soon as you can?
Definitely the keys for all of your departments. So your keys are kind of like your heads. Um, I think we have pretty much all the keys locked in, aside from people like a first AD and a script supervisor, which I think are both kind of very, very important. Just for my side of the things, if you ask Scott, he would say something differently because he's more of the technical side. But those are the two positions that I'm really looking for right now.
Yeah. By the way, for those who don't know, first AD means first assistant director, and they work very clear, very key person on set. They set up the shots, call the shots, make sure everybody's on set on time, and they kind of control the sort of flow of the set, which is a really critical position.
Yeah, and it's good to be kind of picky with who you choose, especially for those positions as well. You don't want to just get anyone who can do it. You want to make sure you get someone who kind of like Jeff was mentioning, can flow at your pace, gets along with you. And I think first ADs especially need to have kind of the right personality, to kind of, because they're always kind of stepping on everyone's toes saying, come on, like, let's get going. We're almost out of time, or hey, we're behind schedule. So finding someone with the personality that can do that in a way that isn't aggressive or is still friendly and not kind of ruin the vibe on set or stress everyone out. So it's a very specific personality that I at least look for.
Yep. Anything else? I mean, the script supervisor, they crack all the shots, and they make sure continuity is when, you know, you're consistent. So if a actor in one scene lifts their right hand, you don't want them in the exact same scene from a different take lifting their left hand, because then the shots won't match at the same time. So that's continuity.
And that's something you can really, even viewers who don't know a ton about film can notice those continuity errors within films. There's some of like films that I've watched before. I've been like, oh, that person wasn't there before, but now they've moved 10 feet over in a different direction. It's very clear to people, even who aren't in the film space, when that happens.
Yeah.
I
And
think there was
it's,
like a big thing with like Game of Thrones, how there was like a water bottle on set. And
Mm-hmm.
everyone was like, oh my
There's a
gosh, a water
coffee
bottle.
cup at one point. Yeah.
Yeah.
some you try to avoid it all, obviously. Sometimes stuff happens, and sometimes you don't have any other coverage, so you have to use it. And then sometimes in some ways it's good, because now we're talking about Game of Thrones in a coffee cup, right? They didn't want that there, and it's not what the artistic vision of the thing is, but we're talking about it, so we just said Game of
Free
Thrones.
publicity.
Absolutely. But it's not meant to be for that reason. Those are truly errors. But continuity is a big job, because there's a lot to pay attention to. I mean, everything that gets set up, and like a grip walks on to change the lights and leaves a coffee cup there, and doesn't mean to, just it was a mistake. And, you know, if you're not paying attention, you're going to miss it. And actors do change the way they turn, or they shouldn't, you know, their motions or this kind of thing. And when you're doing shots that need to match within a certain, you know, everybody gets a mark, so you got to stay on that mark so that you can always match these shots. But sometimes people take liberties. They shouldn't. And sometimes it works, but often it doesn't for the editor. It's a nightmare. By the way, Jared, do you know that you're doing DIT, which is the data information transfer? I think that's what they call it. So your job's going to be very important. You're transferring all the data from the cards when we shoot onto the hard drives. And then you're doing the first round of editing, in addition to all the social media that you're going to do on set. So, and then now you will know the footage really, really well, because you'll have transferred it, reviewed it, made sure it's not corrupt, that we can go on. Like, Scott will be very reliant on you to make sure that you're paying attention, that all the footage is usable. And we'll transfer it onto multiple drives just in case anything were to happen, because you can't get that back. And then you'll do what we call an assembly edit or first edit, to start putting the pieces together, so that we know that we have all the coverage. And then afterwards we'll do the fine tune edit. But at least we have to know that we have all the shots as we're going along and shooting. And you work closely with the script supervisor also, who keeps track of all the shots. That's, you know, they have a list of all the shots, as do I, as the director. But I'm more concerned about what the shots look like and what the story, you know, how the story is being told, as opposed to tracking all that. So that's where we're at. I mean, you know, I think we have a nice jump on it. I think we're well ahead of schedule, but you can never take that for granted, because things happen, and maybe we'll need more time than we thought on certain things. And other little things like, Sally, you've set up all the books. I mean, talk about that if you want for a second, and all the administration side.
Yeah, so I'm starting to keep track of all the expenses and everything. Right now I'm using QuickBooks. And then I'll probably end up using that as well for payroll stuff. Um, and then just administrative wise, keeping track of, since we are doing a lot of crew outreach, making kind of like a crew list, who I want to reach out to, who I've already reached out to, kind of having, I'd like a copy and paste message, initial message to see if someone's even interested. And if they are, kind of walking them through that step process, either via email or via phone call. Phone call works better for me just because people have questions and it's easier to get information back and forth. So I just have been making calls and keeping track of who's interested in what position and what their availability is. Since we will be filming features is a lot different from like filming a commercial or something where it's just 1 week or maybe a couple days here, a couple days there. This is a back to back, several weeks in a row.
Oh, but actually, two other things. So one other thing is I wrote a memo. Sally, I haven't sent it to you, but I sent it to Scott, about what my expectations are for the crew who works on our show, because I have specific expectations as to sort of the number of hours, when I give breaks, how it all works, if we pay overtime, if and when, how, meals, all this kind of stuff. So I'm pretty particular about, I like to be super transparent. I like to say to my cast, primarily the crew, not the cast, because they come and go, but the crew's there the whole time. Here's exactly how we manage our set. Here's how we work. Here's what our expectations are. And so I tell them up front. So there's no surprises. So they can't say, oh, you didn't tell us that or you didn't tell us this. So that memo I sent to Scott because he's very particular about those things. So I wanted to get his feedback. So he gave me his feedback, and now I'm going to finish it and publish it, and I'll give it to you and Kelly to use for your hires as well.
Perfect.
Now, we didn't talk, did I mention casting? I said we're starting to look at cast, but we got, so casting's a big deal at this point, also for availability. And, you know, casting is storytelling, right? The characters and the actors are probably the most critical part of this whole component. So we've actually started the casting process. We have, as you know, we talked last week about with our casting directors, and they put it out, and we're going down two roads simultaneously. So we're exploring non-union actors in addition to SAG actors. We're going down both of those roads. So it's going to be interesting because Miriam and Candace, who you met on the last episode, believe that there's a big enough talent base in Los Angeles, which is 2 hours from San Diego. So it's easy for us to cast from Los Angeles. A big enough non-union base of actors where we could actually cast the whole movie. And if that's the case, then we don't need to go SAG. However, SAG is Screen Actors Guild. It's the union for actors. I'm not opposed to going SAG, but it's a heck of a lot easier not going SAG if you can get what you want in the non-union world, because then you don't have to do so. Being a SAG production, you have to first be a signatory to the SAG contract. You have to get all set up. You've got to post a bond. There's lots of sort of criteria that you have to do in when you're going SAG. And maybe in a future episode, I'll talk about it more as we go down that road, especially if we're going to go SAG and start casting SAG. So we'll talk about all the things we have to do to get set up for SAG. But right now we're exploring both. So the goal is to get the best actors for the parts at the rate that we can afford. And if we were to go SAG, it would be SAG has different levels. So we would be at the modified low budget level, which is the rates are fair, and I have no problem with the rates. It's just that we'd have to determine. So what we're doing is we're looking at the non-union world. So they've already got people who have applied and done self tapes for, which is really interesting. I started looking at them this morning, and now we're going to do the same in the SAG world and see, are the SAG actors better, worse, the same as the non-SAG actors? Then so SAG meaning union or non-union? Because frankly, I just want the right actors. And if they come from one side or the other side, it's going to be fine with me. We just need to explore both. We're keeping both of those sort of avenues open. And that's where we're at with that. You know, casting is exciting. It's fun. That's when it starts to come to life, because you start seeing people reading your script and acting it. But it's also, you talk about, like, I mean, there could be 100 people for each role. Like there could be 500 people, but I told Miriam I want to narrow it down. Don't show me more than 10 at a time because it's really hard to choose. She generally doesn't show me anybody who she wouldn't recommend, like who's done a very poor read. So she only shows me the stuff of people who've done good reads. And you could go a lot of different ways. Like, do I like this person? Do I like that? Do I like
Thanks for watching this episode of We're Making a Movie. Make sure to subscribe to stay tuned for our next episode.